Let's start question number 4 on section 8.5. And in this problem, I guess you are driving along a highway and you observe a mountain directly in front of you. So here's my car and here's my mountain that's kind of in front of me. And the angle of elevation to the top of the mountain is 4.3 degrees. So this is the angle of elevation right here, this 4.3 degrees right there. And after driving 25 kilometers towards the mountain, so that is represented by this red distance right here, this 25 kilometers, the angle of elevation to the top now changes to 6.7. There you go. So here's my 6.7 degrees right there. Now, one thing that you should understand is that when you're getting closer to an object, the angle of elevation should be getting bigger, right, as you get closer to an object. So that's going to be important for our next question as well. Okay, so our question is, how high is the mountain? And so basically I want to find this distance right here, right? From top to bottom here, that's my distance there. Okay, so now that we have our diagram kind of set up, what we're going to do now is we're going to label one more variable and then we'll start solving the problem here. I'm going to label this part here in brown. I'll call that y. And therefore we have the whole horizontal distance. If I look at this whole horizontal distance here, that's 25 plus y. Okay, this is what we're going to do first. Looking at this blue triangle right here, how can you write a trig ratio based on the x, the y, and the 6.7 degrees? Well, the x is going to be the opposite and the y is going to be the adjacent. So that's going to be tan of 6.7, which equals to the opposite over the adjacent. Okay, and then after that, let me see if I can erase this blue marker here. Oops, erased a little bit too much there. Okay, so after that, take a look at the bigger triangle now, this bigger triangle. And I don't care about that part now. Okay, so if I take a look at the bigger triangle, with respect to the 4.3, the x is the opposite. But what is the adjacent now? The adjacent is actually this entire length, right? So that entire length is 25 plus y. So if I want to write a trig ratio for the 4.3 degrees, the x, and the 25 plus y, it would be tan of 4.3. So tan represents the opposite over the adjacent. So my opposite is x, and my adjacent is 25 plus y. All right, so those are my two trig equations, and based on those two equations, I need to do a little bit of algebra and solve for x and y. Let me just kind of start off by, I'm going to rewrite this over here as tan of 4.3 equals to x over 25 plus y. Okay, let me erase that. Okay, so based on these two equations, let's go ahead. This is my first equation, and this is my second equation. Let's go ahead and solve for x. All right, I'm solving for x because x is kind of like the variable that's easier to solve for. It's easier because the y over here has that 25 there. So let's go ahead and just solve for x here. If I want to solve for x, I just move this y up there and multiply with the tan 6.7. So that's going to look like y times tan of 6.7, and that equals to x. And then over on equation number 2, I'm going to take this whole expression here and multiply it with the tan 4.3. So that's going to look like this, 25 plus y times tan of 4.3, and that equals to x. Okay, from there on, I would just distribute the tan 4.3 onto the 25 and the y, and if I distribute that correctly, I would get 25 times tan of 4.3 plus y times tan of 4.3 equals to x. Okay, now we're looking in pretty good shape here because x is over here, x is over there. These two x's are equal, so that means these two yellow expressions have to be equal as well. All right, so the way we connect that is we make both of the yellow expressions equal to each other because they're both equal to x. So that will look like this. So 25 times tan of 4.3 plus y times tan of 4.3. All right, from here on, I would take this expression here and I would move that to the left-hand side. And the reason for that is because there's a y variable here and there's a y variable there. So you want to make sure that all the variables are on one side of the equation here. So this is going to be y times tan of 6.7 minus y of tan of 4.3 equals to 25 times tan of 4.3. All right, and then on the left-hand side, there's a y here and a y here. So now that's a common factor, so we can factor that out. So we can factor the y out from both of them. And if I do that, I would get tan of 6.7 minus tan of 4.3. And that equals to 25 times tan of 4.3. All right, so now we're in a pretty good shape. We're in a pretty good situation here to solve the problem here. I know in class, whenever we do these kind of problems like 5x equals to 10, most students are quick to realize that you just divide both sides by 5. This is and the 5s we cancel off. This is a similar situation where the 5 is really this tan 6.7 minus tan of 4.3. So what we're going to do now is we're going to divide both sides by this expression right here, because this is really just a number. So I can divide this by tan 6.7 minus tan of 4.3, and I can also divide that side by tan of 6.7 minus tan of 4.3. So then that just cancels off, and now you're just left with y equals to that, right? So I'm just move the y over now, so y equals to all that. And from there on, you would just go to your calculator and you would input this into your calculator to find y. If I do that correctly, I would get y would equal to 44.45. Okay, so that's 44.45 kilometers. Now, we're not done the problem yet because the question is asking for how high is the mountain, right? So let's go back to our original diagram here. Let me just erase all this. Okay, let me put that back in here. Okay, so remember, the question was asking how high is the mountain, right? So I got to find the value of x. We just found the value of y. The value of y is going to be 44.45 kilometers. So, and I believe this angle was 6.7 degrees. All right, so take a look at this blue triangle now, this mountain triangle here. That smaller triangle, and our job now is to find x. Okay, well, x is now the opposite. Well, it always was the opposite. So this is the opposite, and the 44.45, that's your adjacent. So the trig function that relates the opposite and adjacent together is tan. So this would be tan of 6.7, which equals to the opposite divided by the adjacent, which is 44.45. And then our goal now is to solve for x, and we do that by multiplying both sides by 44.45. So this would be 44.45 times tan of 6.7 equals to x. And then you just put that in your calculator and you get 5.22 kilometers. And that's it for that problem there. Okay, let's move on to question number 6 here. Before I do that, let me just erase all this because I need a little bit more space to do this problem here. Okay, question number 6 here. A passenger in an airplane. So the airplane, this is my airplane right here represented by this purple dot. It's flying with an altitude of 11 kilometers. Okay, so altitude just means the height above the ground. So this blue distance is my altitude. So the plane is 11 kilometers above the ground from that point. And the angle of depression to the two towns. All right, so there's two towns. So I'll call this, this is town A, and this is town B. All right, so while you're in that plane, you're looking downwards at two towns. My two towns are A and B. And the angle of depression of the towns are 31 degrees and 57 degrees. How far is it between the two cities? Okay, one thing that students need to know is that if you're given these two angles, 57 and 31, the bigger angle, which is 57, the bigger angle is always closer to your object. So since my object is like this blue wall here, the bigger angle covers that wall and the smaller angle is further away, okay? So that's one thing that you definitely need to know. If we don't tell you where the angles are, you need to know that the bigger angle covers the shorter distance, and the bigger angle covers the shorter distance, and the smaller angle can cover a wider distance. Okay, all right, so from there on, our goal is I want to find out how far is it between the two cities, so I need to find the value of y right there. Okay, so there's my diagram set up. And let me label this diagram by putting an x here as well. So x is this red distance right there. And then once we have that set up, we can go ahead and start solving this problem in a similar fashion to what we did in the previous problem. Let's start off with this smaller triangle here in blue. Okay, so I have 57 degrees, I have 11, and I have x, right? So based on all those numbers and variables, I need to find a trig function that relates the 57, the 11, and the x. Well, the 11 here is the opposite, and the x here is the adjacent, right? So the function that relates all that is tan. So tan of 57 degrees equals the opposite, which is 11 over x. All right, so that's it for that one there. And the other triangle I want to now look at here is, let me just erase this now. Let's take a look at this bigger triangle now. Okay, so I have 31 degrees, and if I look at the 11 here, that's still my opposite, and my adjacent now here is, well, it's actually this entire length, which is x plus y. So this is my adjacent right here, right? So if I had to write a trig function for the bigger triangle, it'd be tan of 31 degrees equals to the opposite, which is 11, divided by the adjacent, which is x plus y. Okay, so these are my two new equations now, and these are the two equations that I need to solve now. Let me just kind of rewrite the tan 31 over here so that I have a little more space to do the algebra here. Okay, let's go ahead and solve this. Let's go ahead and get the variables separated here. So here's an x, and here's the x plus y. Let's just move those to the top. So this is x equals to 11, and I'm going to move this tan 57 below, so I'm going to interchange those two. So that'll be tan 57. And then over here, I guess I'll have x plus y times tan 31 equals to 11. All right, so these are my two new equations, and let's go ahead and solve this. Let's distribute first, so distribute that. And if I distribute that, that's going to be x times tan 31 plus y times tan 31. So very similar to the previous problem in terms of distributing. Now this is the only new algebra step that's a little bit different from the previous problem. I noticed that there's an x here, right? But what is x equal to? Well, x is equal to this x over here, and that x is equal to this. So I'm going to substitute this green part, this 11 divided by tan 57 into that. All right, so that's one of the new algebra steps here. Here's my new substitution steps. So this will be 11 divided by tan of 57 degrees times tan of 31 plus y times tan of 31 equals to 11. Now this is looking pretty good now because although these look like difficult expressions, so they're just really numbers here, right? So I have y times tan 31 equals to 11. Now this part right here in purple, this is kind of a big expression right here, but that's just an ugly number. All right, since it's a number, I can easily move it to the other side. And since the expression is positive on the left-hand side, if I move it to the right-hand side, it becomes negative. So negative 11 divided by tan 57 times tan 31. All right, and then from here on, I would just go to your calculator and I would just figure out what these expressions equal out to. So for example, if you put all of this into your calculator, I get 4.29. And 11 minus 4.29 is 6.71. And then I have a y times tan 31 over there. And then in order to solve for my y, I can divide both sides by tan 31. All right, so those cancel off. And I'll just move the y over. All right, so y equals to 6.7 divided by tan 31. And if I do that, I get 11.161. And that's my final answer. And I believe the units will be what, kilometers here? Yeah, kilometers. Okay, and that's it for this homework video guide.